As an art student, I had a project of making a shadow box, and my goal was to make it have movable parts, so it could be almost like a stop motion animation scene. And I figured I would take you guys through the process of me making it, because it was really fun and it was really easy, so you guys definitely got this. Let's go through that process starting now. Starting off, we have the plan. I actually made this storyboard in my animation club during one of our workshops, so I thought it was the perfect little idea to bring to life. Afterwards, I created this collage on Pinterest just to get down the vibe I wanted to go for and the colors. So the first step of this process was making the shadow box. Of course, you can start off with a pre-made one, take an old box, or I think you can even buy them out of like wood. But what I did was I took foam board and cut it to the size of my backgrounds, which I was going to make out of watercolor paper. And then after I scaled out the exact size of the background, I cut around that, taking off the pieces, so that way I could build the sides of the box. I'm not sure I explained that in the best way possible, but I hope the visuals are helping. I used a hot glue gun to secure everything in place, and after I finished building the box, that was pretty much the end of our day 1, but trust, we have accelerated progress in day 2, so that's when you get to see all the cool, cute details. Day 2 definitely focused on getting each of my backgrounds done, making sure the lighting was in, which I did with fairy lights, and all the watercolor pieces that were attached to this project. If you didn't know, I really love watercolors. It's actually one of the first paint mediums I used. Nowadays, I really like water mixable oil paints because that's what I used throughout high school for my art classes. But I really still love watercolor, and so I thought this was like the perfect project to go in with that, because I do want to have this reminiscent, nostalgic vibe to it. So yeah. I used felt as the material for the base of the project, just so it gives off this grassy, cozy feel, and I think that worked perfectly. Going into the little meaning behind the project, as you saw the storyboard, this project focuses around 3 ladybugs going on a little venture to their mushroom home. And that is a recurring symbol I've been using throughout my pieces. If you saw my birthday challenge post, I also incorporated ladybugs into that as well. The number 3 for me is what I use to represent me, my mom, and my sister. So even in bug form, we're still 3 little ladybugs going on this little adventure to our little house. And yeah, I really love centering my projects around my connections and like who I'm close with. I even tend to hang out with my friends in groups of 3, so that's just a number that's really been sticking to me all my life, and yeah, I would consider it one of my favorite numbers. I would definitely suggest trying to come up with an idea for your story box that makes the most sense to you. It can incorporate your characters. I chose this one because I do want to make a stop motion animated film of 3 ladybugs on their little venture. I just didn't know how soon I'd be doing it until we got this project assigned, and I was like, wait, okay, I could at least do like a test run with paper for this one. I do think I want to eventually adapt this like little story into a clay medium. Yeah, so we'll see. I will definitely document the process. Here, I'm just showing exactly how I installed the fairy lights. I used double-sided clear tape, which was really helpful because even though I was kind of placing it everywhere to make things stick, you couldn't see it by the end, which was perfect because you do want things to be kind of seamless so everything's nice and neat when you present. If neatness isn't the biggest deal to you, that's also fine. This is just something I really look for in my art. So yeah. Now comes the tough part. I want to make removable and interchangeable backgrounds, so that means cutting into the foam board to make slits. You can definitely do this in a better way. Me trying to film this while simultaneously cut into the foam board was so stupid, so I had to put the phone down just because I had to use both hands, and my cuts still came out rougher than intended. If I did this project again, I might use a different tool to carve into things. Don't worry, I was definitely really careful not to hit the lights. I kind of already knew exactly where I was going to slide in the background piece, so I just made sure that the string lights didn't go too far back. Yeah, this cut was really rough, but it turned out fine. Something I didn't end up doing but I would suggest for future or for you doing it is to add tabs to your removable background so they're easier to take in and out. I measured correctly. Awesome. Yes, thank you for the little cheer. I really needed that. I was really locked in on day 2. I got done all the watercolor backgrounds. The one you're seeing right now is the interior space, a little living room scene for the ladybugs to go into and around Act 3. I used a lot of warm colors because I wanted to bump up the cozy vibe. I do have a little complementary color option in there with the blue, but I think it works really well all together, as it should, as a complementary color. Part of this tutorial is not that you have to use watercolor. I really like it personally because it's one of my favorites and I can add a lot of detail in it. And like I said, it really helps with that nostalgia vibe. But if you want to use acrylics or just colored pencils, because that's my secondary medium I'm using throughout this, or whatever, just make sure you pick the right paper for it. For example, the watercolor paper, I really had to make sure I used that instead of just regular ones so it wouldn't curl as bad. And even with that, it still curled, so I had to lay some stuff on top of it because sometimes I added too much water and then that would kind of paper would start to curl in on itself. So just be careful. A tip if you are going to use watercolor is that you can lay out different colors, just paint sheets in the color you want and then cut out the shapes that you want to make afterwards. So I have a lot of greenery. The one I'm making right now, I want to make a button pin cushion essentially for the ladybugs to sit on, but because I didn't want to use pre-made colored paper, I painted the paper in sections, or I would paint a whole color. I have one where I just paint the whole color green, and then I use that for leaves and bushes and trees, and that works out really well. But you'll see how I'm carving out the shape that I want after the fact, and that works out good as well. Of course, you can use already made colored paper. I just like the texture of the watercolor, especially since I was already doing the backgrounds in this painterly style. I wanted all the objects inside the home to also match that. A fun way to add depth and dimension into the backgrounds is you can lay out little hot glue dots and then let them dry, then glue the actual pieces on top of that so they have a bit of a lift off the page. I just thought that was kind of fun and adds dimension, and maybe you'd like to do that as well. So yeah. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm really struggling to figure out what to say during this tutorial. I feel like because the scene's gone for so long of what I'm doing in the process, it's hard to figure out what to say. So Thank you for hanging in there. My last little guide tutorial was so much shorter and only had 3 steps, so it was a lot easier to explain exactly what I was doing and then to just let the scene carry on. But now it's like, okay, should I give more detail? Am I giving too much detail? Let me shut up, I'm not sure. Thank you for sticking around regardless, and I hope this is helpful. So let's continue on to what I'm actually doing. Right now, I'm building the chair piece that I want inside the living room, and so I'm sketching that out. I'm gonna measure it in accordance to the background, make sure it fits. This is actually based on a chair that I really have in my sunroom. In your little shadow box, you can make all different types of set pieces, like plants or background animals or characters. I decided to do this with 2 pieces of furniture that I knew my characters would be sitting on. You don't have to make everything pop out is another thing to keep in mind. I kept the fireplace very 2D flat to the original background, and then just what elements my characters were going to be interacting with is what I made pop out. One thing that's always fascinated me about watercolor is how colors dry and change. You can kind of see when I first started painting in the colors I mixed, I was like, wait, I meant for this to be slightly darker, a bit more pink, but that led to me mixing in the orange tones with the pinks. I did make sure to get a lot of depth and tone within this chair. That way it really sat inside the environment. And I think it turned out pretty good, so that's good. And here I'm just adding some extra detail with some orange. Let me know if you guys would be interested in some type of painting tutorial. I have been through a couple of painting classes now, and I could show some of my skills maybe. I'm trimming off some excess that I knew I didn't need, and then with everything, to avoid any page curling, I sat a cup of water and the palette on top. Trust, it was a bit dry. This is just in 7x speed, so that's why it looks like I put it on right after finishing. And here's it glued to the page. You see how it lifts just slightly. I had to go back in with the yellow background, so any white that was showing that I left blank isn't. And then I just added some little details with my colored pencils. And this is how the final result came out for our indoor scene. Sorry it's a bit in shadow, but oh my goodness, I really like it, and I think it suits, and you can see the window just perfectly and how the sun shines through. And I'll turn on the fairy light so you can see how that looks in just a second. Yay! Honestly, the lights excite me a lot more than they should. I would definitely, if I was doing this project again, go back and add even more. Now we're moving on to the outdoor scenes. So I need to create a leaf and the tree along with the mushroom house. Here I'm just sketching out the tree. For this one, I made the shape before painting, which also works really well, especially when you need to measure how it's going to go through the slit. And you'll see here that I'm just putting it up against it and then marking exactly where I need to cut into the foam board box. This was probably one of the funnest things to paint. All the colors are pretty monochromatic. I'm using browns, reds, oranges, and I just had a really fun time layering it, trying to get it to look like a textured wood bark while still being watercolor. I know I definitely admitted in one of my videos, but one of my least favorite parts of making my animated videos is the coloring part. I love the look of it, don't get me wrong, love how it turns out, which is why I'll continue to do it, even though it's not my favorite thing. However, with real painting, oh, I love painting in color. Forget line art, it's out the window. But for digital, that changes for me a lot, which I think is pretty interesting. Now you can see me cutting out little details to go on this bush. I first made a general shape and then I'm just adding little small details to it afterwards. Not making every individual leaf, but just enough so you can see that there is texture to the bush, kind of like how I do it in digital art. It's so satisfying to see these all get glued on, one by one. Even though it was very meticulous, I remember while doing it, it's so satisfying to see it all come together. Oh, and when using hot glue, here's a tip. Make sure to remove all the little stringy bits. My old sculpture teacher was very particular about that, but really it does make it come out really nice, so I see what he was getting at. He used to take off points if you had strings still attached. My X-Acto knife decided to give up on me in this moment, but that's okay, we recovered. And here you can see me making the slits for the different elements that I'll be pulling in and out, like the tree, the bush, and I'll do the other side for the little house. That's it all together. And here I'm making the leaf. This one I actually made a little tab so I could pull it in and out easier, and it definitely helped. So I don't know why I didn't do this with the rest of them. I just don't think I planned them out well enough to have the tab, and then this one ended up being so big that I just had extra room by the time I finished cutting it and carving it. So yeah, and then here's what side it's going on, opposite to the tree and the bush. You can kind of see, oh, that's as much as it fits in. Okay, I need to cut up higher. Just kind of fixing things as I go. My last day of work was actually in the car on the way to school. I went home that weekend, so I was coming from my house to my school, and I didn't have time to go back to my dorm, so I just knew I had to finish everything in the car, which was the last element was cutting out all the ladybugs, and I didn't get to show you the process of making the mushroom house, but there it is. And here's the final product. I edited it all together as a video to show you guys how it would move and the different scenes. And here's it with audio. Thank you so much for watching through to the end of this little guide. I hope it was helpful in some way and kind of enjoyed our little talk. I had a really fun time making this, so I definitely wanted to share this project with you guys. And if you do make it, please tag me. That would be so awesome. Okay, well, don't forget to like and subscribe. Quack!